Welcome, SENS Talk.
Russell winds in, feeds it back across the strike, and scores! Brady Tkachuk makes it 2-0. Claude Giroux, hit along, scores!
Tim Stutzock cross, Tkachuk score! The captain, Brady Tkachuk, buries it with 1:18 to go.
See you later. Go, SENS, go. Welcome to SENS Talk. My name is Brandon Plant, and I am your host. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Hockey is back. The preseason is here, and that means we are just that much closer to the regular season. But before we get to the regular season, we have to get through the preseason. We got to get through these battles in camp before we firm up the starting lineup. And that's what this video is about. If you couldn't gather by the thumbnail and by the title, I'm going to take a look at 3 players, in my opinion, you should be watching this preseason based off a couple things. Obviously, just, roster needs, but also just the actual player themselves and where they're at in their career. So I'll just say this. Ottawa last night took down the Toronto Maple Leafs 6-5 in overtime. Shout out to Kari Yakimchuk. I've been puking all day. I've been yakking, I should say, all day after that disgusting, unbelievable goal from Yakimchuk to win it in overtime yesterday. So the preseason is well underway, with game number 1 being won by the Sens last night in overtime. So this is the perfect time to take a look at 3 players I think have a very good shot to make the Ottawa Senators opening night roster, and more importantly, who you should be watching for the next week and a half before the regular season kicks off. So with that, let's jump right into it. And I know I put top 3 basically, but I'm just going to go through 3 players because I don't want to rank them. At the end of the day, all these players have different situations around them, and I don't think it makes much sense to rank them. So let's start off with friend of the show, Angus Crookshank. This is a guy that for some time Sens fans have been saying will be making the Ottawa Senators, and it appears this is the year that could be the case. The left winger, who's 5'10", led Belleville in goals the last 2 seasons with 55 goals the last 2 years. 140 games in those 2 years, by the way, and was also just under a point per game player last year with 46 points in 50 games, including 24 goals. Also was an AHL All-Star. He also played 13 NHL games last year for his first taste of the National Hockey League, compiling 3 points, including a goal in those 13 games. He also averaged nearly 4 blocks a game during his stint last year with the Ottawa Senators. Very simply, Angus Crookshank is exactly what you want from a bottom 6 forward who's a prospect who is basically on the cusp, is knocking on that door to make it to the National Hockey League. He's got speed, he's got offensive ability, and most importantly, he's got a physical edge to his game. I'd be shocked, frankly, if he doesn't make the opening night roster. I'm not saying it's his spot to lose, but he's been one of the best, if not the best player for Belleville for quite some time. He's young enough and he's a prospect where he has to make that jump now, to be honest with you. And he has the tools and the intangibles to do that. So I think Angus Crookshank's a player you should definitely watch if you're not already. Because this is a guy that, where frankly, the stars are aligning. After that terrible ACL tear he had a couple years ago, he's been nonstop ever since. I said it when we drafted him a few years ago from New Hampshire that he was going to be an underrated player and potentially a steal for the Ottawa Senators, and I'm not ready to say that because he has to be a full-time NHLer to say that, but I'm pretty close because, again, this guy's got a great blend of skill, grittiness, agitation. He's a pest. We know the Ottawa Senators love pests as well, as you all know, so Nick Cousins, Brady Tkachuk, the list goes on, you know what I'm saying? So Crookshank would fit in very, very well. So that's my first player to watch. The second one to watch, and you might say there's some bias after his incredible 4-point performance last night against Maple Leafs, but I don't think so. Ever since we traded for Jan Jenik from Utah, formerly the Arizona Coyotes, for Igor Sokolov, I don't think he's a shoo-in to be the 4th-line center, but he has the tools, the size, and the experience to become the potential ideal 4th-line center for the Ottawa Senators. And I know there's many of you probably saying, Brandon, what about this guy for the 4th line? I know. We'll talk about that in the honorable mentions. But I have Jan Jenik as a guy to watch in the preseason, not because he has the inside, spot to get into that 4th-line position. It's certainly going to be a battle for him to get there. It's not impossible. He's definitely one of the contenders. But it's not a shoo-in, and I bring him up because he's 6'1", he's a natural center, he's 24 years old, so he's about to hit the prime of his NHL career. He's played a lot of AHL games, just a bit of NHL games, but this is a guy with size, this is a guy with skill, with Czech Republic, for example, in the World Juniors, he's been a consistent player for them. Was a top 3 player at a tournament for the Czechs before. And again, he's a heavy hitter. He's got the skill. He's got the size. And he's a gritty player as well. That's what you want for your fourth line center. And Jan Jenik is exactly that. In his AHL career, 165 games, 46 goals, 74 assists for 120 points. Yeah, that is pretty good. Can't lie, but that is just the AHL. And the NHL, some decent numbers. 22 games played, 4 goals, 2 assists for 6 points. My point very simply is Jan Jenik is not an offensive guy, but he can produce offense, as you can see from his AHL stats and his NHL stats for the record. Nearly a point every few games, averaging just under 9 minutes a game in those 22 games. Not bad whatsoever. So this is a guy with some bite to his game. This is a gritty center and a heavy hitter. Let's just say that. He averaged almost 2 hits a game in those 22 games. It was like 37 hits in those 22 games in his NHL career. And if you average his, NHL career, hits through 60 is nearly 11. Absolutely insane. Now, of course, if he plays more minutes, those numbers will dwindle. So I'm not telling you to focus on the exact number. I'm telling you to focus on the fact that the guy throws around the body whenever he's on the ice. And we know the Ottawa Senators, especially under this new management and coaching staff, love physical, big, gritty players. And that's exactly what you're going to get from Jan Jenik. Heavy hitter, prototypical fourth-line center. Yeah, his face-off percentage is not the greatest, at hovering around 45% in his career, so that definitely has to improve, and that's something to keep in mind for sure. But you also have a guy like Nick Cousins who can rotate there, right? So you don't have to have him starting every game. Maybe he's the 13th forward, but this is a guy that, for your fourth line, is exactly what you want. And again, we'll see it in the honorable mentions. You're probably wondering why I didn't mention Adam Gaudette, and I'll talk about that then, but I guess I'll just mention it now too. Gaudette, he will get NHL minutes this year for sure. Majority of his NHL career has been under Travis Green. So, you know what? I think he's very likely to get a spot, to be honest with you. The only reason I'm not putting him in this top 3, and the only reason I'm mentioning him as an honorable mention, is 2 things. One, I expect him to get NHL minutes. As I just said, he and Travis Green have a good relationship. Majority of his NHL games have been with the head coach. But 2, his style of game doesn't really fit what you want from that fourth line. I see him getting called up if, God forbid, Norris gets hurt and they need to shuffle the lines, or there's an injury in that middle 6. I can see him getting elevated to a starting role for sure. But again, as the 13th forward or as the 12th guy, I just don't see it working out here for him on that fourth line. He has too much offensive ability, and he's fine defensively, but I think, again, they're going to want some grit on that fourth line. Putting a guy with Cousins that can be a gritty guy as well is a 1-2 punch that they're looking for. And again, Jenik kind of replaces what Mark Kaslik was as well, but a bit better, because again, Kaslik was traded. I like Kaslik, but he was traded because he wasn't the best physical guy. Jenik is the complete opposite of that. So again, we know what the Sens want on their fourth line. It's not offense. Offense would be nice, but the priority is a defensive guy who can handle his own and lay the body and be a gritty guy and essentially just disturb all the players. I'm not going to say the S word, but you know what I'm saying. So Gaudette definitely could be in that conversation. But again, for Jan Jenik, I just think it makes more sense for Jenik to get the advantage in this video, I guess, purely because of his adequacy, I suppose, for the fourth line compared to Gaudette, who's more of an offensive guy. Now, the third player is Kaylin Addison. And I mentioned this because, look, I think JBD is going to get the 6-7 spot, but it's no guarantee. I mean, again, he could be sent down. They've done it. They've considered doing it before, I should say. And again, I mean, they didn't just bring in Kaylin Addison for no reason on a PTO. They have 1 roster spot left. They're at 49 out of 50 National Hockey League roster spots, or contracts, I should say. So throughout the organization, in the junior leagues, in the AHL and the NHL, they have 49 players under contract. They have 1 more spot available. Kaylin Addison could be the guy that takes up that final spot. Again, there's no reason why they brought him in other than the fact that, yes, they want some internal competition, but you already have Hamonic there with JBD and Clevin. So 2, yes, they're obviously looking for potentially another option for that third pairing if they don't like what Clevin's doing or if they don't like what Jacob Bernard-Docker's doing. Now, I want to mention this. I think Clevin's a lock to make the team. I don't really see how he doesn't make the team at this point. Hamonic, I don't see starting every game, and JBD is a fine player, but I think Clevin brings a lot of that defensive expertise, if you will. He's a very strong player, a very physical player, and I think they want that on the left side. But speaking of the left side, Kaylin Addison, he's a right-handed defenseman. He's 5'11", so he's a bit undersized. So again, this is really a battle between him and Jacob Bernard-Docker. I don't see them sending down Tyler Clevin. I think it's his spot to lose, frankly. He's physically ready. He doesn't look out of place when he plays, especially in the AHL. And in the NHL, he's looked fine, I guess, in preseason. But I think he's ready, and this is more so about who's going to be with him. And it could be JVD. It could also be Kaylin Addison, who last year in 72 games had a goal and 16 assists for 17 total points. He's played 152 NHL games, so just a few more than Jacob Bernard-Docker, who's played just over 100 games. So roughly the same amount of experience as Jacob Bernard-Docker, but they bring different skill sets. While JBD is more of a two-way guy who is, as you saw my interview with him the other day, hell of a shot blocker. The guy is a shot block merchant, frankly. He's a warrior. Kaylin Addison, who blocks shots, by the way, is more of an offensive guy. 152 NHL games, 6 goals, 44 assists for 50 total points in his career, with a plus-minus of -59. Not great. He's been on some rough teams, to be fair, but he has had a top 10 worst plus-minus in the league the last couple of years. Now, look, I'm not a dinosaur. I look at the advanced analytics more than plus minus, but again, I don't care what team you're on. If your plus minus is one of the worst for a couple years in a row in the National Hockey League, that's something notable and something very concerning, especially when you're talking about a defenseman. Emphasis on the defense, right? So that is something that's a drawback, plus on top of the fact that his Corsi for percentage is below 50% in all situations. So in that regard, not great. But I put him in this conversation because, again, he's that offensive guy. If they see Clevin as more of a defensive anchor, on that third pairing, they probably want somebody to move the puck a bit more. And Kaylin Addison certainly can move the puck. He's a strong puck mover and a very, very strong skater. And he started yesterday, by the way, on the third pairing with Tyler Clevin. So clearly they're testing those two out. That was not a coincidence. And that's why I say, look, it's no guarantee. He has to beat out Jacob Bernard-Docker, no doubt about it. He's on a PTO. JBD is not. But that's exactly why you need to watch him this preseason, because that's going to be a hell of a battle for that third pairing final spot. So great puck mover, strong skater. Basically the right-handed version of Brandstrom when it comes to offense, because he's undersized and a good puck mover and everything. But defensively, not like Brandstrom, who is actually pretty solid defensively. Very, very underrated in that regard. He was also a star in the WHL with 215 points in just over 250 WHL games. And also won gold with Team Canada at the 2020 World Junior Championships with 9 points. Now, as I kind of mentioned already, his advanced analytics are a bit rough defensively. But I like to leave it on a positive. He was 10th in the National Hockey League for giveaways per 60 out of 1,500 defensemen the last 3 seasons. So, yeah, not bad whatsoever. Not bad whatsoever in that regard. You don't want a defenseman giving away the puck, especially when he's known to be the guy that's going to be moving the puck. So that's certainly a good sign. And by the way, that analytic is from Natural Stat Trick. But yeah, besides that, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree? And by the way, here are my honorable mentions. Carter Yakimchuk. By the way, I'm still puking. I'm still yakking after that incredible goal last night in overtime. But I can see him getting, 5, 6, 7, 8 games here to start the year. But I don't see him getting more than that. He needs more development, no doubt about it. And I just think while he may be able to, keep up, we want him to flourish, and I just don't think he's ready for that yet. So keep an eye on him because he's our best prospect right now, I guess you can say. And of course, this is a guy that has turned a lot of heads already, just 1 game in. Stephen Halliday is another guy. He's physically ready, of course. He's got the size and will get NHL minutes this year for sure, but he will need more AHL time, in my opinion. A good prospect like that doesn't make sense to rush, especially when he's known for, his offensive ability. This is kind of similar to Adam Gaudette, who we'll put in this conversation where, the fourth line is really the only spots available in the forward core right now, and I don't really see a spot for him there. I think it makes more sense to have him dominate in Belleville with a pretty solid squad, to be honest with you. As I just mentioned, Adam Gaudette is the other guy, basically the same exact story. And Zach Ossipchuk is another player who definitely keep an eye on. He can definitely get that fourth line center role, but I just don't know. We'll see, of course, but I just think that they probably want him to get some more AHL time. He's still a young prospect, remember, but certainly you will see Zach Ossipchuk in the National Hockey League this year as well. But yeah, besides that, thank you all for watching again. Comment down below. Let me know what you think. I'm sure there's a lot of opinions I spouted in this video that you disagree with. So let me know in the comment section down below. As always, make sure to check out our great interview from the other day with Jacob Bernard Docker. And besides that, I will see you all soon. Go Sens, go.